Hi, and welcome to Caldwell County Schools WIDA Standards Training. First of all, I'd like to go over a few acronyms so that if I use these in the course of the training, you'll know what I'm talking about. ESL stands for English as a Second Language. That's the program. EL or ELL refers to English learner or English language learner. The current term is EL or L. This refers to a student who hasn't tested out, hasn't exited, and is not considered fluent. LEP also refers to limited English proficient student, a student who speaks a home language that is not English and is not considered fluent. MFEL, MFEL stands for Monitored Fluent English Learner. That is a student who has tested fluent and is now being monitored for 4 years. After a student exit, we meet with teachers and just make sure the student is thriving in the classroom and that language is not a barrier to success. WIDA is World-Class Instructional Design and Assessment. North Carolina has chosen WIDA for our content standards for English language development and also for our annual assessments and our screeners. And many states across the United States have also done so. Access refers to our yearly assessment for all LEP students. This isn't to gauge their ongoing progress, to monitor and make sure they're showing progress from year to year, with the goal being of exiting in 5 years. Let's see. So what are the WIDA standards? They are the bridge that enables English learners to access content. WIDA's philosophy is that language and content are intertwined, that the content teacher is in fact a language teacher. They're teaching the specific vocabulary of their area, and ESL teachers are laying a foundation of both social and academic language to enable English learners to access the content. So the two working together can utilize the WIDA standards in order to help the student grow more proficient and more able to access content. WIDA also recognizes that language growth is composed of the interconnected domains of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, that they are not learned in isolation, and that they do have different speeds of growth, though. Some students might learn to speak a lot quicker than others, whereas some might be more literate and learn the literary skills first. Let's see. Okay, so the WIDA English Language Development Standards are comprised of social and instructional language, as well as academic language, the language of language arts, the language of math, language of science, and language of social studies. And even though these are broad, WIDA also provides grade-specific example topics to ensure that the language instruction ELs get with their ESL teachers supports classroom instruction and supports what's being taught in the classroom. So this is an example from grades 3 through 5 of where they've broken it into the 5 standards and example topics. The WIDA proficiency levels range from level 1 entering all the way to level 6 bridging. In North Carolina, a student will be considered fluent if he or she gets a 4.0 in reading, 4.0 in writing, and a 4.8 composite or overall. These three have to be done in the same testing year. So if a student gets a 3.9 in reading one year, but meets the other two criteria, and then the next year makes higher than a 4.0 in reading, but then the writing drops, they will not exit until they get all 3 of those in one testing year. This is an example of the writing that would be expected from a student at each proficiency level. For example, a level 1 student may be able to use a word or chunks of language, general language, not specific, that is graphically or pictorially supported. Whereas a level 6 student would be expected to use content-specific language, specialized, technical, and would be expected to write with the complexity of their peers and of the quantity of their peers as well. Their English-speaking peers, that is. How will this information help you, and how will you have access to the information about your English language learner? First of all, this is an example of an English learner plan that you will sign and receive, or now that we're doing online Collaborate, you may be able to print it out yourself. At the top, we have the proficiency levels. So the student, you can see the different listening, writing, reading, speaking, literacy, oral, comprehension, and composite. And then we have the description of the levels. These are just a general description. And then at the bottom, we have the student-specific can-do descriptors. This is what he or she can do in each of the areas based on their scores. These are really what you want to look for when you're looking to differentiate. According to WIDA's guiding principles of language development, they say students' access to instructional tasks requiring complex thinking is enhanced when linguistic complexity and instructional support match their levels of English proficiency. So we have to start by knowing their English proficiency. What are they able to do? And then from there, they mention linguistic complexity has to match, and also instructional support. So that's where we'll go into differentiating. This is an example of how to differentiate language demand, or also I've referred to as linguistic complexity. For example, this is an objective, a standard content objective. Students write up the results of research on the impact of a historical figure or event on contemporary politics, economics, or society. This is a writing task, and the difficult thing for English language learners, obviously, is being able to produce the language here, because they might be able to read about a historical figure or event in their native language. They might be able to analyze this, but being able to produce the English of this. So we're going to have to modify the language demand. So you can see how, with this objective, we're going to go from asking a student to critique. This would be maybe an essay level task as far as the language demand. Critiquing requires nuance. It requires a very technical language skill, a knowledge of how to really go in close and analyze something linguistically. And then we're going to go down to level 4, can discuss. This is a little more broad than critique. Describe. Define. Now you're getting into the shorter sentence level. Describe might be a paragraph. Define can be done in 1 or 2 sentences. And then level 1, we're asking them to reproduce key words or phrases. So we're looking at the word or phrase level, and we're looking at reproduce. This means they're reproducing something that has been introduced to them already. So as we go down in proficiency level, we're going to decrease the language demand. Now this is an example for writing of decreasing the output that we're asking them to do. But there's other examples for reading, for speaking, and also for listening. So we're going to have to decrease the language demand of both the input and the output. Then the second way we're going to differentiate is with supports. We've got the same objective here. And then at the level 5 level, there's no supports. At the level 4, we're using models. At the level 3, photographs and models. Level 2, we're adding in word banks and bilingual dictionaries. And level 1, we're also have the word banks and bilingual dictionaries. Now, how does this look in the classroom? I don't know exactly because it depends on the teacher's activity, how they arrange their classroom. But it might just be a matter where some of these are given as a whole class, where the whole class is given modeling. The whole class is shown photographs to support the students in the mid-range and upper level. And then the students maybe at a lower level, the level 1s and level 2s, might be shown also given word banks and be allowed to use their bilingual dictionaries. Now, let me just show you an example of some other supports we can bring into the classroom. Oh, excuse me. As we go down in proficiency level, we increase support. There's sensory supports, graphic supports, interactive supports. The more you can bring in pictures, videos, realia, real activities, real models, real figures, or graphic organizers. Graphic organizers are a good way of showing complex ideas like comparing and contrasting or cause and effect. You can show those higher order thinking skills or higher ideas. You can show those with less language, boiled down to using less English. Also, interactive supports can help. Sometimes students have bilingual peers who can help them. Sometimes it's a cooperative grouping that you've devised. Sometimes you might decide, well, I'm going to group students at the same level for this activity and differentiate the activity. Or sometimes you might decide to create heterogeneous groups. You know that this student could support this student. So that all depends on that's all to the teacher's discretion. I've listed a few resources here for you. First of all, your ESL teacher is a great resource in your building. ESL teachers usually, they all do have multiple schools. So if you'll just drop an email, set an appointment, they'd be happy to come by and help you. Consult your English Learner Service Plan, which I mentioned earlier. Translators, digital translators, Google or Microsoft is a good one as well. We've got access to Transact, which is an online digital translator that has a lot of school forms, school letters that are translated into different languages. Also, we have 4 bilingual liaisons who work in Caldwell County. They do have multiple schools as well, but will be happy to help with parent support or with newcomers. WIDA website, just look up WIDA Can Do Descriptors. And you also, your ESL teacher can give you these for your the English learners in your classroom. SIOP resources. SIOP is a great method of teaching. Not exactly a method, it's a model. And they have a YouTube channel, so you just look up SIOP, the website, their books. Again, you can consult your ESL teacher, and they can give you materials. Colorín Colorado is also a good resource. This is has some great advice for content teachers who have English learners in their classroom. Also some great materials for parent contact with Spanish-speaking parents. Just a wealth of resources there. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this, and feel free to ask any questions of your ESL team, and we'll be happy to get back with you.